The iPhone 10 marks the 10-year anniversary of the iPhone, as well as Android. For Tech Republic and ZDNet, my name is Dan Patterson with ZDNet's Steve Ranger to discuss where the smartphone goes from here. Steve, is this the peak smartphone?
Well, it's a really good question in that the iPhone X or 10 or whatever you want to call it, it does kind of mark, it's a handy marker in that it marks 10 years of smartphones. These things have grown out of like nothing 10 years ago to being something that pretty much all of us carry. The market is absolutely saturated, certainly in like the US, Western Europe, and increasingly in the rest of the world. So it's quite an interesting point to stop and say, well, okay, this technology has gone from nothing to everything in 10 years. What's going to happen next? And I guess there is some argument to say we are at peak smartphone, right? Smartphones are as pervasive and as essential to us right now as they will ever be. And there are some suggestions that maybe that's going to decline, and whether the next 10 years is going to be so kind of like absolutely obsessed with smartphones, I think is a really good question.
We've seen some innovations with the smartphone, including form factor. What can we anticipate?
So, I mean, I think looking at, say, the next few years, there's a few little pointers that you can look at already in terms of the technology that's out there. I think absolutely one of the things we'd like to see more of is like curved screens, maybe foldable screens, things like that. Samsung, for example, has done a lot of work in terms of obviously curves on their devices out now, but also in terms of folding things in future. Now, that might mean that we can carry bigger screens in the kind of the same sized form factor, or smaller screens, or it gives you that kind of like flexibility, to kind of like innovate again. Because right now smartphones all look the same, right? They're all pretty much a slab of metal or plastic, and not very exciting. So if you get into kind of bending, folding, that could be I think quite interesting over the next maybe 2, 3, 4, 5 years, depending on how the technology evolves.
What can we anticipate in terms of IoT and Internet of Things augmentation of the smartphone?
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting area in that at the moment, certainly if you've got any smart home devices or smart office devices, they tend to link into your phone. So you can have a whole bunch of apps on your phone. That's kind of increasing the burden there. But I think some of that burden will kind of spread out again because, for example, you'll end up asking Alexa what the weather is rather than looking at a weather app on your phone or something like that. And actually that intelligence will start being imbued in the things around you, whether it's a chair or a trash can or anything. So actually that load doesn't always have to be in your smartphone. Your smartphone doesn't have to be the source of every piece of information or every kind of request you make. So I think that's going to be one of the bigger changes. Also coming over a similar time frame, maybe a little bit longer, so that actually our reliance on the smartphone as our gateway to everything about the kind of digital world, I think will kind of decline a bit.
Is it possible that we could see the decline of the smartphone? And coupled with that, what's next?
So I think this kind of comes back to your first question, which is, are we at peak smartphone? I think we're there or thereabouts. I think what's going to happen next is things like wearables, which are a really small market right now, but something that people like Apple are working on really hard. I think that will become more of a kind of a plausible thing. I think you will end up, wearing some kind of smart watch. You will have a smart building around you, whether you think of it in that way or not. So the kind of the watch, a watch or another device that you might carry will take some of that kind of like processing load from the smartphone. The other one to watch out for, I guess, is kind of smart glasses, some sort of goggles. I mean, there's quite a lot of those in kind of enterprise environments right now. Obviously, the tech companies have been there before and it went really badly wrong. But it does seem to me, at least, that some kind of display that you wear, maybe not all the time, maybe you just put these glasses on to, do a bit of work or to watch some kind of like content or some video or something. That seems to me to be quite plausible as well. And I think what you'll see is, I don't think the smartphone is going to go away. I think, say in 10 years time, so if the life of the smartphone has doubled, you might find that you'll still have one, but it might be some kind of thing that folds up in your pocket and you can unfold it into a much bigger screen, like the screen of a notebook size screen, and or something like that. So will it be something you make a phone call on? Maybe not. I mean, maybe you have earpods that you make phone calls on instead, or something like that. So I think you will always probably carry some kind of device, because I can't see that we'll ever get away from the need for having a screen of some sort, even if smart glasses do become a thing. But will it be as pervasive and as obsessive as now, where you kind of start freaking out if you've left your phone on your desk and you'd never leave the house without it? I think some of that kind of burden will go away, and I think we'll see a kind of a richer world where we'll use all sorts of different computing devices, even though we might not consider them to be computing devices. I think that the phone, whereas it's now our only gadget, I think it will just become one among many.
All right, Steve Ranger is a senior editor for Tech Republic and ZDNet. You can read his entire story called After the iPhone 10, Predicting the Future of the Smartphone by visiting ZDNet. And while you're there, make sure you subscribe to the Next Big Thing newsletter.